It's the final Tailor Tales. Sorry it took a bit longer to record this one. I have tried my absolute best to cram all the best ideas I can into it. For my first impressions of a game, see the first video. For my full massive review of every single thing I didn't like about the route, see the second video. Also, I've got further feedback that the bit in the previous episode where the music was a bit too loud, people still could hear mostly what I was saying, so I'm not going to go and try and re-record that section unless, like, if people comment and they say that yes, please do re-record that section, because honestly I'm so fatigued with working on this one particular game. I'm glad to have this all sorted and to move on to the next game. So anyway, what we're doing today. Because I have gotten weirdly carried away in my hype, I have made a massive ramble of my ideas of how I would rewrite this route. Can I just head up this video here by saying, my opinions obviously are not objectively true and I am not claiming this. I do not think the game is bad at all, it just had a lot of wasted potential for things personally I would have liked more, but if you like it perfectly fine as it is, then no problem. Full power to you, I'm happy you're getting enjoyment out of things I couldn't. And so with that, moving on. A brief summary of the issues for people who don't want to watch the other two videos. Jarmus's route is advertised as a route about superhero tailors, then it completely drops that plot after chapter 1 for 14 chapters and starts going on about aliens from space Arabia. Then it completely drops that plot again and goes back to the superhero plot in the last 5 minutes. That's my biggest problem with it overall, is a weird delineation between the two side plots and they rarely ever actually get to overlap. Until the very end where everything is just cataclysmically construing into a cocoon and rushes its arse off to get a conclusion when there was so much time we could have cut to actually spend on this plot. Also, 28 chapters long, only actually start romancing the guy 3 chapters before the end. In conclusion, pacing issues. That is going to be a big focus on the things I would like to rewrite. But also, lots of really cool world building and endearing side characters. So many side characters and every single one of them is more dateable than this man. We need to do something about that. We also have so many side plots going back and forth with so many things that didn't get resolved by the end, so we have to do something about that too. My idea is to let those two problems solve each other. I'm going to imagine what if these subplots all got their own dedicated route and the time to shine they needed. And also, what if all these side characters were the stars for those routes instead of Jarmus? So we've got Kane and Smeagol, or whatever you decide to name the brother in your version of the game. They get the superhero plot. Eeyore getting the alien plot. The plot we actually got in the final game. Lana and Bilious, the fantasy Arabia plot. Same world, same cool world building, same cool resistance plot. It's just actually fantasy now and literally zero has to be changed to make it so. It can just be like an isekai. I mean, Norns has a cool enough plot to deserve a route, but none of the existing like random genre changes we already have would really fit for that. So I decided let's throw it out and let's give him an entirely new route. He will be a zombie apocalypse scenario. And the plot we're completely discarding is the random detective arc about your parents as superheroes who somehow never knew they were superheroes even though you are a superhero. Literally, why would they keep their powers secret from their daughter which also has powers? I genuinely don't think there is any potential in that at all as a plot, so bye-bye. We'll just take some of the good elements from that and fold them into Smeagol. Anyway, all of that will be in the second half of the video. If you do want to just skip the Jarmus stuff and get to the other characters, I completely relate, I feel that way too. I'll put some timestamps on the screen, here's to skip to that, or here's to skip to the purely visual redesign portion of the Jarmus section, if you just want to have a look at that before you move on. And now, regretfully, it is time for Section 1, how I would actually fix Jarmus. In a hypothetical universe where I had to make this route still be about Jarmus, here is how I would make him actually have more of a presence in his own plot. I would recommend, honestly, either picking aliens or superheroes and chop the entire other half out of the plot. If we stuck entirely to alien. Chop out the prologue of you being a superhero for 5 seconds. Chop out the ending of you being a superhero for 5 seconds. Heck, chop out the middle section where we're on fantasy Arabia alien planet. Replace that with an actual, more alien type place. Or have the whole thing take place inside his spaceship. Have it more thoroughly focus on that section. Have you actually interact with him at all during that section rather than spending the entire time with Eeyore. We could fully go into like the idea of like a reluctant kidnapper who's like secretly good deep down, but he's doing these atrocities because he's being manipulated by this evil overlord who's like taking his family hostage. And how the protagonist starts off from like thinking he's evil and then wanting to go against him, wanting to escape, and realizing, oh, he's just another victim too, and then we team up and we take out the bad guy together. With the events of how the game go, the protagonist kind of has to have powers and then in some way connections when you get back home that would cause humanity to be able to win the war. But I'm sure there's ways you could write around that to like not have superheroes be part of this at all. My first instinct, the simplest idea I would go, like, still have powers. Say that the MC is like half alien or a mutant. This is a sci-fi future, we're focusing entirely on the sci-fi and the aliens. Human beings randomly have like X-Men mutations. Like, at least make it a type of superhero which blends more into it. Or heck, there's like a bunch of like half-alien people on Earth, and then the dormant DNA comes out and embraces his powers. Maybe like, the M starts a story thinking she's 100% human, and like, oh, I just have this strange power I can't explain, and she's like a very anti-alien at the start, and she's like willing to believe the worst of Jarmus. In this version, Jarmus wouldn't be so much actually genuinely the worst, it would just be sort of like a biased perspective starting off. Like, as she learns there's more to him, as she grows closer to him, she finds out more. By getting to know Jarmus, she gets to know more about her own heritage. It would also be a more naturalistic way of her to gain extra powers in the end. It is still a cool idea of like mixing blood in the magical alien mating ritual gives you some of his powers, but I do think it's a bit unbalanced because like he doesn't get any of your powers. And again, there is this thing of like human powers and alien powers being treated as the same thing that can just like coexist and work in weird ways like this, and like the one thing that cures human powers cures alien powers. There was a lot of like inconsistent confusion. It would be a lot clearer if it was just the same power. Or heck, you could have the MC be like a different species of alien if you didn't want to go for like the recovering your heritage aspect to it. You could also just go with like the MC not having powers but having some sort of other reason why all the aliens mistake her for being important and they won't kill her right away. A random idea, way to get powers, and also that some kind of artifact fell off the alien ship, it's crash landed on her, it's like bonded with her like the Omnitrix in Ben 10. Now she has powers and they can't get it off her and they have to take her home. You're now the legendary chosen one of some kind, I don't know. It would also make a lot more sense why the MC seems to just not ever think about creative ways to use her powers until the plot finally requires her to do it at the very end. If she was new to the powers, it would make much more sense why she couldn't, escape. And we wouldn't have to get the frustrating scenes of her making elaborate plans of how I can instantly kill you with all these creative uses of my power to like stab a needle through your heart, and then failing at all of them, and it's never brought up again and she never thinks about it ever again. Whatever the reason is, it still goes the same way. You get kidnapped, you get taken off on the alien spaceship. And then from there, things change. Instead of being left the fuck alone by Jarmus and entirely taken care of by Eok and the various other grunts, and spending most of your time just wandering around trying to escape or just like having philosophical discussions in the halls with not even talking to anyone, you are kidnapped on a ship and it is just you and Jarmus. There is not a big supporting cast behind the scenes. He has to do the imprisoning of you, he has to do the taking care of you, he has to do the explaining things to you, he has to do the bonding with you, the trying to be reasonable, the showing he has a good heart deep down. Ideally, we want to consistently establish right from this point, that Jarmus is not a bad guy deep down. Give the player some appeal to this romance, like, very fast. He doesn't have to be like the most perfect guy in the world, he doesn't have to like not be your captor. But give us more than this, like, oh, well, yeah, he kidnapped me and he verbally berates me and he's like hurt and bruised me and he keeps me locked in a prison cell and he doesn't let me pee when I want. But at least he hasn't sexually assaulted me. I mean, that's one line at least. He's murdered several people in front of me and he says he's going to murder me too, but at least he hasn't done a sex crime. That's going to be basically enough for the entire thing, is just like shorten it down and then do a bit of a consistency filter over it. Go back and check the earlier scenes to make sure if they actually fit. Because it did make Jarmus incredibly unlovable, and even when the game started to tell us, oh, he's good deep down, you wouldn't believe it because they were literally saying he wouldn't do a thing that he'd already done. Oh, he'd always sacrifice himself to save his men, he'd never harm his men. Oh, opening 14 chapters, entirely him harming his men. So that's what we're going to go with. We're going to focus on how we can refine, how we can bring out the best sides of Jarmus and how we can start his plot earlier. So like, for one, give him a better, more defined moral code. There's more lines he won't cross. 2, establish it faster. 3, have him actually on screen and actually showing all of his stuff to us rather than just being told secondhand by other people. Also, just if it was only 2 of you, it would be a more intimate situation. You would have more chance to get to know him, to get to like work up whatever you call it, sexual tension. I don't really know how sexual tension works, but you know. And if we directly saw him taking care of us, he's not bad to us. He tries to give us some kind of freedom. He's just like, he's regretful. He's like, oh, well, I know I have to take you back to my home planet because for whatever plot reason, you're really vitally important to us. We need to take you back home. And what are they going to do to me when I get there? And he's like, I don't know whether they're going to kill you or not. I'm doubting. Like, oh, would my boss be evil enough to kill you? Oh, I don't know. Maybe he's still doubting. Maybe have it less clear, like Veritas from the start is like super, super evil. And that Jarmus is already 100% on the side of, I don't want to hang out with Veritas, I want to be gone, yet for some reason takes a really long time to actually join you in stopping Veritas and being gone. Again, consistency issues will be entirely gone if we just like establish him right from the start, like, mix him up with Carlin, have it be like he is conflicted, rather than just being a guy who can't stand up against the bad guy. He's like, I don't really know what's good or bad anymore, I don't know if I should be on his side. Have him maybe not fully know the extent of what's been going on with the conquest. Like, now in this personal setting of like, getting to see you, a victim, and to see exactly what's going to happen to you and all the other people that have been kidnapped. It's like, oh god, I'm feeling the reality of what's really happening. Has this been happening before? Like, I don't know, it can be a situation like a big fleet of spaceships came down to Earth and all of them got destroyed except Jarmus, and now normally he wouldn't be one-on-one the only one taking care of one single prisoner, but now he is, and he's in a more of a situation like, oh, I get to see the reality of what's being done. You can have him still start off haughty and uppity and like lying about what he's like, I'm totally not doubting what's going on. Oh, I only see you as an Earthling, I only see you as a bargaining chip. But like, ideally before the 10 chapter mark, honestly before the 5 chapter mark, let's have some cracks at that facade. Honestly, the entire route could potentially just take place within the spaceship. It could be a nice, short and sweet route, like half or less than half of the length, where it's just you and him alone in the spaceship for like a long... Let's say it's like the full 6 months of the entire game takes place. So that's just the one journey. It could go from the captive kidnapping situation to the funny roommate situation by the end. And the whole thing could be about trying to bond with him, trying to convince him, like, what you're doing is wrong, let's stop this, let's turn back around. Me and like all the people on Earth, we can help you and stop Veritas and save your planet too. And then it could just be like heartwarming ending. He is at the last minute like regretted his actions, decided like, no, I'm not going to do this, and he does rebel and he goes back and he joins you. You can still end it in a big dramatic, really super awesome battle scene that like rewards you for all of that's going on. You can have a cathartic takedown of like the unseen, barely explained evil guy who caused all this to happen to Jarvis, because honestly that's what Veritas is in the final game. He has no personality beyond just being the worst arsehole in the world. The only attempts they give to justify why he's doing any of this was wrong. He was lying about doing it for the sake of his brother. He is just an arsehole and he's also abusive to his brother. So even if we literally never saw Veritas, pretty much nothing would change. So just have some sort of big cool spaceship battle. Maybe in this version it is a sci-fi future. Humanity also has spaceships. That can explain it rather than taking them down with superheroes. You and Jarmus somehow do the same thing of teaming up to take out the final bad guy in the most dramatic super way of a cool CG image of you hugging and being cute. We could even still have a CG image of like you flying through the sky as a romantic date of confessing your feelings. In the version where the MC is either half alien or has been empowered by an alien artifact, it could be like, I'm going to teach you what it feels like to fly through space, because like this species can breathe in space. They only use spaceships for like faster travel or something. That could also be good as like a moment of the MC realising, oh my god, I've been turned into something inhuman by this magical art, but there is no going back. It could be like the realisation that there is no artificial oxygen in this spaceship. The mere fact that you are surviving right now means you have indeed been bonded with the artifact. And then it could be a moving moment. You've gone from like that being a terrifying moment at the beginning, like, oh god, I can never go back home again. What if they'll reject me because I'm one of you now? To like, now he's teaching you how to use your powers in like a romantic and cool way, and you're like, now I don't feel bad about this. And you're also helping him not feel bad about his powers. It's like, no, your alien species is not inherently evil. You don't have to do the same as your evil boss is doing. You can come back with us and be good, and etc. There's lots of different ways you can do that. Or if you really want to just stick with the plot we have in the final game, take that and just insert more Jarmus scenes, insert all of this earlier establishment of his traits, more development, more logic of how he goes from one trait to another. Honestly, if we just cut out the amount of time MC spends just being alone doing nothing, we would have more space for Jarmus. Or the amount of time Jarmus spends just being an arsehole and having no development, we would have more space for actual development. It is wild how the very few times you actually see him, he is just doing nothing to progress his character on. So let's go into that. Hypothetical, the plot is exactly the same, but Jarmus is just better fleshed out during it. During the alien abduction spaceship stage, role of Iok goes to Jarmus. Jarmus in this is not the big powerful super commander of it. He is some kind of, not a low ranking grunt necessarily, but he's like, there are other commanders who are above him. He's not the one running this ship. He is a halfway point between what we got with Iok and what we got with Jarmus in the final game. You have this guy who's kind of the underdog, he's kind of still gruff and he's kind of still bad, and you go what we do in the final game, you get the false impression that he's the boss of it all, but he's actually not. But it happens early, he's not even the boss of the spaceship. You don't have to wait till Veritas to get that really cool scene of like him getting his haughtiness cut down, and you initially go, oh yeah, kick his ass, take him down, he's haughty, and then you go, oh my god, oh no, this person's like a literal actual abuser, holy shit, he is actually a victim too. This recontextualizes everything that's happened. It could be like, by chapter 4, by chapter 5, that is the point we get the reveal of that. And then from there up until like the 10 chapter point, we get like a big bunch of actual development of him. You get to know him, you get scenes actually with him, you get to see the other sides of him, you get to like slowly see it changing his mind, but it still ends in the same place because he doesn't have the power to stop a ship. It's just like, you've almost convinced him like, oh, maybe we should stop it, maybe we should get away, and it's like, oh no, we've arrived, it's too late. Like, now at least you know now he's on your side and you're both trapped in this situation. He's got to keep up pretenses, he's got to be like, oh, I've still got to cooperate, because if they knew I was with you, then like I wouldn't have have the power I'd have to like stay in the military and fight, and like I'll spy on the military, I'll try and see if there's any way I can get out, I'll try and see if like we can steal a spaceship or something, etc, etc. The section when you're on the alien home planet could be all about that. It could be you and him getting involved in like making plans to escape. It could just be, if we haven't got to that point of his redemption, it could just be like, oh, we're on here, he's been assigned as your personal guard, he's going to be one watching you while you're trapped here. And that would be a perfect excuse. It could have been boiled right into the final game. I don't know why we didn't go for it. That's it, he's there, he's your personal guard, you're the prisoner, he has to make sure you don't escape. You see him all the time, you have actual scenes of him, you don't just go off and find 5 more way better people. And heck, this section could be about actually joining the resistance and trying to do things. It wouldn't just have to be nothing can change until the last moment. Have more of those things like his endearing, like getting lost and making mistakes and being embarrassed about admitting he's made the mistake. Have that actually happen in like more romantic settings, more like showing he's opening up, showing he is getting closer to admitting his mistakes and like being genuinely kind and everything, rather than just, oh haha, he walked in on you naked like several times. Oh. Generally just don't have it so that like the only quote-unquote good scenes are just him being sexy in some way. Have a mix of that and also like actual romance or him having any good or moral traits. Then we're going to still have a plot of like, now you're going back to Earth, but instead of it just being a contrived situation where like you're still under captive and Jarmus still hasn't changed his mind, still hasn't joined you, but we have to go back to Earth anyway and for some reason they're taking you along, rather than just leaving you here as a captive. Like honestly you'd think like, hey Earthlings, we're going to take over your planet, we have your princess captive, and she is not right here in our ship where you can easily just run up and take her back if you defeat us. That might have worked better. But anyway, instead of that, you're going back home because you and Jarmus have teamed up together and successfully like stole a ship and you're running like home, but you know the aliens are on your tail and like somehow you managed to like activate a warp drive, like you stole an experimental warp drive or something which has only one you, and that's the reason why none of the other ships can catch up to you for a month when you land, rather than it being like, we have defeated Jarmus and now we know precisely exactly how long it will take Thanatos to send another ship to defeat us. It was a bit contrived, the exact precise 30-day time limit. And you know what, let's land back on Earth, let's not immediately have all problems solved by saying our brother off screen has like gotten military contact. They're going to easily take down the aliens for us. Or at least they're going to boast they're going to do it and then completely shit it in the end. But anyway, have it so you land back on Earth, you are just a normal person, but now but the two of you are normal people and you have power. You can have the cool and funny buddy hangout scenario where like you're teaching him about Earth and stuff. Have him be more interested in it. Have him actually like warm up more to it. Get to the point where he's like, oh, I like hot chocolate faster. Overall, everything, get to the character development faster. And also, continue the training arc. Have more of a training arc. Have it be like, we have to try and find a way to convince the government to believe us that the aliens are real and they're coming back and everything. It's like, I don't know, have choices like, should I reveal my powers or not? Or will the government like lock us up or something? You try and go and get the help of the government and like, oh, we're gonna experiment on you. You have to like have a daring escape from them or something. And then you have to like gather up a team of like underground, like, I don't know, mutants to become superheroes, rather than it starting about superheroes, not being about superheroes, and then going back to superheroes. That would be honestly interesting. Or just simply have it be like, you two against the world. Maybe you still have a cool family member, who knows. You have to make a complex plan using all the knowledge you've gained to find a way to take this guy out. It might be better in that case if the villain was like a smaller scale threat, like rather than Thanatos like being the ruler of the entire planet, he is just like a general of a small army of some kind, like one of many. Maybe the entire planet isn't all wanting to take out Earth. Maybe he's just like a rogue guy who's like, I'm gonna take out Earth because I have a grudge against Earth or something. So that would explain why like the rest of the planet wouldn't just come and like take arms. Or it could just be like, we defeated Thanatos, we know the rest of the planet's gonna come and take up arms, but now we have like proof, we've been televised across all the world, the government believes us now, and now we're gonna team up to defeat the aliens. Like, it's a lot of ways it can be done. But just have a good balance of funny scenarios of bonding with your new prospective boyfriend and learning more about his culture, him learning about more your culture, having a lovely wonderful time, and actually still having a training arc and doing things to progress the plot with that. Don't just have it be suddenly we're going to go off and do detective work on like our parents' secret whatevers, which in the end have no relevance whatsoever to the final fight. It is like, wow, the importance of all that, it was so that we would know the secret leader of the evil anti-superhero guys is one of our other friends' dad who killed our parents. Okay, but what importance does it have to the rest of the plot? If you remove the entire character of the evil dad, and if you remove the entire character of the evil anti-superhero group, there would be no change whatsoever. The only reason they are there is to introduce like the anti-superpowers serum. Honestly, this all would work a lot better if it was like some kind of Omnitrix equivalent, like a secret alien super weapon is the strongest thing they ever have, and you've got to learn how to control it in this training arc, and so you would be able to take out the whole army by yourself or something, with the cheering help of your lovely boyfriend who has actually had a character arc, like, before the last 5 seconds. Anyway, that's all I got for fixing James's plot, and I am tired. But before we go, what would I do about his character design? I just personally, I really am hung up on the fact that just from looking at any screenshot of this, you would have no idea the guy is an alien. It seems to me such a waste to have a plot about dating an alien, and then the one you date is the one who looks the least alien out of every alien in the entire game. Like, they put their effort into making really great alien designs, and then no, those are not the ones you're allowed to pick. You will have guy whose only difference is having slightly pointy ears and fangs. She also never shows, he has one cutscene image where it shows his pointy ears uncovered by his hair, and like one or two expressions where he smiles you can see his fangs. There is so much effort gone into making this man look as un-alien as physically possible. So I just had a bit of a go personally at designing my idea of like, what can we do for an alien that's still mostly humanoid and still like has the same appeal of being a muscular guy, I guess? And this is where I went with. Here are first a few failed designs I did for it. I just tried to trace over and draw over the actual sprite because I wasn't confident in my ability to actually mimic the art style, and I think it ended up looking completely crap. But at least it lets you see some other ideas I was chasing around with. I was trying to stick a template like, okay, what if he was still mostly human looking, but we just added a few accessories on top to make him look more outwardly alien? I don't feel like any of them really worked too well. I think trying to stick too much to the limitations was hampering my creativity. Also just the fact I cannot draw a realistic art style to save my fucking life. First one I went with kind of exaggerating what we already have in canon, which is like he has glowy blue markings and he's supposed to have fangs and pointy ears. So what if the pointy ears were bigger and more prominent? What if the fangs were bigger and more prominent? More, I guess. Put some spikies somewhere. It really wasn't working out, and again, me trying to stick to just making a human with things attached, and the primary thing I don't want to have a human with things attached, it kind of went bad. Second one was moving with the idea of like maybe the markings are like, I don't know, flames or something, flame hair, let's put flame eyes, and let's make a wildly weird colour scheme for it while we're at it. Didn't really go anywhere, do still kind of like the idea, but I definitely had to develop it more. And third one is just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. One of his markings like went around the contours of his muscles, I don't know. As an arrow ace person, I'm not sure what people who like are purely sexually attracted to a character would like, but I was trying to do this with feedback for my friend who does like men. So I thought maybe having his alien features somehow like, I don't know, cooperate with the muscles and enhance them might work as a good idea. Also then, I was just messing around like what if the idea of like alien he has tentacles instead of hair. It didn't really necessarily suit him very well, but I do think it still looks kind of cool. Maybe it would be cool for an entirely different character. Then we have the final version I went with, drawn in my actual art style, which probably isn't nearly as appealing as the one in the actual game, but it let me flex my creativity a bit more because I wasn't hung up on trying to like draw inside the lines. So I combined all the ideas from the previous one, and we have cool flame hair, cool flame markings that contour around the muscles and stuff like that, and the idea of the arms being a different colour and having swirly crazy patterns inside. I had all this together with like just completely abandoning the idea of him having to still look mostly human. Here the idea is that his natural skin tone is like stone, he's like a magic magma man. Going into the canon idea for the game, which is like his power is called phasing, which is like his eyes glow and he gets glowy markings all over him and he goes into a super berserker state. Here was the idea of like, okay, we take glowy markings as a concept. What if the glowy markings were the primary focal part? And what if we could bring in some like more alien world building into it? I imagine like his species are like they're stone people who like live in the volcanoes underground or something. It'd also make it extra impressive and scary. Veritas, the main villain guy, who's like a plant-based guy, managed to conquer and destroy their entire planet. I hate that guy. So anyway, I was thinking like, if he has like magma running all through him and that's the excuse for the markings glowing onto the surface. And I did a little bit like the stone being like blackened and hardened by the magma to show like different accents over him. And his claws are like made of pure obsidian and they're like the strongest part of him. And the glow underneath is like the magma has become like magically charged and it's extra strong. I don't know, I was just going wild of ideas. The primary thought was just someone who would be warm to hug. Maybe I'm a bit too innocent, I don't know. I'd like to think even people who are sexually attracted to this man would still find it beneficial that he's extra warm and cuddly. Just imagine laying in bed with this man on a warm summer morning. Come on. It could, like, visually represent his secret warm heart underneath all the grump. Also, just I like this colour scheme. It was a cool colour scheme. I have no further excuse. Colours are good. But just to add in that there were a few limitations with the marker pens I had, so I was imagining the stone skin in his true form and the brown skin in his human form to be, like, the same level of darkness. I wasn't imagining him to, like, suddenly magically get whitewashed when he transforms. That is just, I did not have a darker colour of grey. But yeah, anyway, that's what I was thinking. For people who don't like a big cool alien man and would still like him to look human, the story already has a built-in excuse for that. There's glamours that he could use to look human. So I don't know why we didn't just use that. The idea is that he would look like how he actually does in canon most of the time, and then when he's using his phasing power, he turns into this. So I did a little illustration of that. Also messing around with a few different colour scheme ideas. So there we go, now I can stop blabbering about this man and stop blabbering about everybody else! Moving on to splitting the subplots up between all of the sub-characters and what if any of these got their own dedicated route. Ways we could rewrite the main route if we just assume Jarmus is not there anymore. The Eok route. The game is already the Eok route. You could literally put exactly what you already have in the game and just change the ending scene so that you actually say yes to Eok and go out with Eok. 100% all of the Jarmus route has more screen time for Eok, has more genuine chemistry for Eok, has more reasons to care about Eok. Eok does more to advance the plot even. The entire game would play out exactly the same if you just removed Jarmus. It's wild. I don't know how someone can mess up writing their own main character so badly. So heck, you could have it as it is now and just add a choice in the end which of the two you want to go with. That would have been a way better and more interesting choice between two routes other than just arbitrary changes, some side characters reappear for no reason. I don't really know how your sexual preference would, like, magnetically, telepathically make other people appear in the end game. I'm just imagining Nornus, like, off 10,000 miles away on a planet, like, oh my god, my Dom senses are tingling! If we need to get all the same events happening, this is how we could make it happen with Eok. We already have a pre-built-in excuse for why Eok is a person you've seen the most during the kidnapped on a spaceship stage of the game. He's a grunt, he's working with him, he's supposed to be looking after you. So why not just move into that once we get to the alien home planet? Just have him be assigned as, like, the personal guard to bodyguard over you, the prisoner. Actually, why didn't they just make Jarmus do that, to be honest? That would have been an excuse why he could have more screen time once we actually get there. Instead, you just have zero screen time of either of them. It's really weird. Enough complaining about canon. And let's say you aren't mistaken for princess and put in, like, the most luxurious inhabitants whatsoever when you land there. Say you actually are treated like a regular prisoner and Eok is the one guy who, like, cares about you and tries to do good for you. And have a bloody rebellion plot, not just be, gasp, I'd suddenly distrust Eok because he's part of the rebellion. I suddenly think he must be evil and the rebellion must be evil, despite the fact I've clearly seen that, like, the regime is corrupt. And, like, I don't get why it takes so long for the protagonist to realise that, like, the rebellion is a good thing. Just go into the plot. You could actually become involved in a rebellion with him. You could, like, see more about it, learn more about it. It wouldn't be resolved off screen while everyone is on a different planet. And then you'd have the reason why you go back to Earth in the end. Be that, like, Eok, who has been trying to help you form a plan to escape, actually forms a plan to help you escape. And just have it so all the alien spaceships are chasing behind you to recapture you again. That would be the perfectly reasonable excuse for why you can go back to Earth and then you have a certain amount of time before the rest of them come after you. It didn't have to be the strangely contrived situation it is in canon. I need to shut up about canon! Key importance to the entire plot when we have the buddy roommates arc actually have scenes of Eok enjoying and loving all these new and cool human things he's found. Those were the best parts of that arc, and every time it would cut off and start being about Jarmus again, I'd be like, no, like, push him off screen, like that meme of Home with a sheep. I was so fucking disappointed when they had the scene about, like, teaching them how to use a bath for the first time and it didn't focus on Eok. And how wholesomely overjoyed he would be about discovering human baths. So imagine introducing to all these funny smelling shampoos and, like, figuring out how to, like, wash his scales. Like, do we have, like, anything that would work good? Like, buying, like, reptile shampoo or something. Funny scene where he thinks soap is something you eat. I don't know. It could have 10,000 ways. It could work great. It's just, like, a platonic friendship bonding moment. It doesn't even have to be super sexual. Imagine him adorably huddling up next to the radiator afterwards to warm himself up. Imagine gently towel drying his funny little lizard head. Imagine Eok wearing pajamas. Come on, it's an overflowing of joy. I wish we could have a mini-game to help him make sandwiches instead of it happening off-screen. We had that whole arc where, like, we go clothes shopping and he wants to wear a pretty dress. I wish we got to see a CG of the pretty dress. It even happens in canon and we don't get to see it. Imagine taking you to a fun fair. Imagine so many things. Imagine Eok at the beach discovering tiny crabs. building like a sand spaceship. There is just so much. They crafted a character who is perfectly designed to be overjoyed to be in the human world, and then instead we focus entirely on the guy who fucking hates the human world instead. It's such a bad choice. And honestly, the ending would have resonated even more if it was like, hi, I am like a level 1 grunt that you, Veritas, probably never even knew about, how you've ruined my entire life, how you've ruined my entire species' life, how you've like co-opted our cultural practices and like turned us all into slaves and stolen our entire fucking planet. Veritas is obviously gonna be like, oh, I don't know who you are, you're like one of a million. It's like, yeah, I'm one of a million, I'm the one who's gonna kill you. And just how much more powerful it would have been to have like the actual displaced indigenous people take back the power and rule their planet again, instead of just, oh, Lana is the queen now. We're assuming she's gonna be a good queen, even though in the ending we showed her doing like really, really bad, morally bad choices. Depending on your route again, because as we all know, kissing a man slightly different bends the entire personalities of everyone around you. And then, of course, we have to talk about Eok actually does have a canon route planned, and it's going to be completely fucking different, where he's a random human being in an ancient human times fantasy setting. And I just cannot get over how much of a strange choice this is. Like, you hear the audience overwhelmingly saying, hey, we want to date the cool lizard alien man, and you go, yep, I got you, fam. Human man in revolutionary France. I'm not going to preemptively assume it's bad or anything when it hasn't come out. For all I know, it could be great and still have all the same personality appeal I love from Eok. But I am also feeling worried how like the developers said like, oh, he won't be automatically warming up to you as fast, he's gonna start kind of tsundere. I'm like, oh, every single love interest in the entire fucking game so far is tsundere. Come on, it's not like you have to make someone tsundere to make them a romance. At least you have confirmation when he warms up to you, he will indeed be the same soft and wonderful self. I don't want to have to take 20 steps to get there. If I wanted, I'd just play the canon route of the game. So honestly, my biggest fix and suggestion of that is like, literally just have Eok continue being a monster. Like, come on, it's so easy. Like, you could literally supplant the exact same design into this setting and just say he's a dragon or a lizard man. Like a kobold or whatever. I've still got my fingers crossed that maybe it'll turn out he's not really actually a human, he's just like a lizard in disguise, and we see him as human form first and we still see his regular form later. So I drew up a concept of that. You could just literally have the same regular form as it is in canon, but I've drawn up 2 different designs here, like if you want to make it a bit more dragony and fantasy-ish, or if you want to make it half human because, I don't know, for some reason all the love interests have to be the most human-looking aliens. I don't know why, but if you want to go with that, you could still go with that and have him be half alien as opposed to no alien. Not that Eok's human form isn't cute, it's still one of my favourite designs for all the humans in the game, but it's not the best one. There's a very clear best one. And seriously, answering people going, we want this character with, yeah, okay, but he has to look totally different and act totally different and be in a totally different setting, is just a bit strange. It's a strange choice. In conclusion, not much I can suggest to change about Eok, just Eok is perfect as he is. Actually stop changing him, change him less, just give us more of him. I love this lad forever. And next we have the bro section, and Kane is here too. I kid, I love them both. This one will be taking the other main chunk of the game, it'll be all about superheroes. Actually about superheroes. Like, I can take the plot set up in the first chapter of there being, like, discrimination against superheroes and actually go somewhere with it. Rather than only coming back at the very end to say, oh, it was resolved because Kane did a live stream. Which is especially funny when Kane has got so little screen time in the actual canon route. Like, he wasn't even allowed to be there to find out his own dad was a supervillain. So, big obvious that's going to be the focus of his plot. But also the plot of the main character herself. I think it would work best to actually go again with what was established right at the start and then immediately dropped. The idea that she doesn't want to be a superhero, she's got a power that isn't combat based, and she covers a genuinely intriguing concept of like how you could use superpowers in a supportive manner for different jobs. Am I the only one who was incredibly disappointed it just ended in the end of like, I really did want to be a superhero all along, I was just denying it. No! I thought using superpowers to make cool outfits was genuinely cool. And you had a genuine point that there are some superpowers which would work better in doing supportive roles instead of fighting. And that's a great thing that deserves to be praised and is equally as important as going out and beating people up. Like, you can be saving lives in different ways. Where is my game about that? So we can make a game about that. Screw the rules! So that's what will be going on with our protagonist, and then who will be the main focus of this route? I just really like the platonic vibe that she had in like the first chapter with Kane and her cool brother, and how Kane and her cool brother kind of seemed to have a bit of shipping going on, which then just went nowhere. I don't know if it was just accidental. They had a vibe Personally, as someone who's arrow ace myself, I just find it interesting when the dating sim just has, like, here's one platonic option, or here's a route which is not focused on romance. Like, you can't just throw in, like, regular visual novel stuff into dating sims. No one's saying you can't cross the streams. Have, like, a route focused on your relationship with your brother, a lovely, wonderful platonic relationship, like, not weird incest or anything. Flesh him out more, develop him, have your bond together, have your history with losing your parents and stuff. Don't turn it into a strange detective arc, and don't have such a letdown of a resolution to it all, but you know. Also for the brother, just actually keep the fun and happy and cute, like, brother relationship you have at the start. Have him continue being the funny comic relief, silly, zany, mad scientist guy, instead of, like, in actual canon Jarmus route, like, as soon as you get back from the aliens, he, like, entirely changes personality and doesn't say anything for the rest of the game except, like, being the stereotypical, like, gun-toting father who's overprotective of his child, like, oh, I don't like this new guy you're dating, and I'm never going to speak a single word of my own personality ever again from this point because of that. I didn't like that. That's a boring trope, and also it's just completely antithetical to everything I liked about the character, so let's not. Also, Jarmus is just not a guy worth defending. I was like 100% agreeing with him, like, yes, Jarmus is indeed bad for me because he's not being written very good. So, yeah. And Kane can just be there as a supporting character, as, like, your brother's love interest. You can have the appeal of, like, matchmaking. It can still be a romance route, but just not your romance. You're helping someone else with their romance. Like, that would be really unique. That could be, like, a selling point. There are very few games actually about that. The only one I can think off the top of my head is, like, Fire Emblem, I guess. Heck, we could even have a kind of, like, a love triangle thing going on. What if you and your brother are both in love with Kane, and that's how the route goes, is, like, Kane picks you over your brother, and it's tragic, and it's like, you still love your brother, you want to let him down, you wouldn't, like, pick a man over him. When it comes down to it, family's more important than dating, and you have, like, this big conflict and stuff like that, and then that's how you know Kane is a good guy for you, because he understands, and he doesn't want to upset his best friend, Eve. And he's like, if this is going to tear you apart, then let's not date. And then, like, you have a big heartwarming moment when a brother realizes, like, oh, I've been being unreasonable, I'm seeing how much I'm hurting both of you, I'm gonna let it go, I'm gonna let you guys be together, and it's, like, big and heartwarming, and it's like, of course we can still be friends even though we're not going out, and it's great and wonderful, and it's like big resolution, big happy hugs. There are so many ways you could just do it with this great dynamic that the three of them have. Or if you want to go for a more regular romance, you could just use Kane. Or I guess because Kane is actually supposed to be a cameo character from another route, like, he has his own full route in a different thing, but you could just make this Kane, like, a unique different character. He doesn't have to necessarily be a crossover cameo. And with how little we actually see of Kane, it would be very easy to just rewrite him with a different personality. We didn't get to see very much of his personality. He's kind of a sassy and generally fun best friend character in the first chapter, and then he reacts how anyone else would to finding your father is a secret megalomaniacal arsehole. I don't think everything about the dad backstory would hit so much harder if it was actually happening to, like, the main focus guy of your route, and he was part of it, and you saw his reactions, and you were reacting to it, and you cared about it, as opposed to just, again, literally, he is not even on screen when you find out his dad is evil. He just gets told after the fact. Poor Kane. I think him and Billy have suffered the worst in being sidelined. Wait, is it only the gingers? You could just have a regular route of, like, here is your superhero boyfriend, he continues being a peppy, fun friend, and, like, the classic, like, oh, we were childhood best friends, but what if it's turning into something more, and just have it be genuinely cool and fun, and focus on the superhero racism stuff and the sad dad backstory. Or you could come and bring back in the superhero appeal that it said was going to be on James's route. The description of the route is just plain wrong. It says that you help someone you think is a superhero, it turns out he's actually a supervillain, oh, but instead he's an alien who kidnaps you. The way it was written made me think it would be a supervillain, and it would be about being super. I do think it's genuine appeal in that idea, of, like, being tricked by someone you think is good, but what if, like, the character doesn't know he's evil, but the player knows he's evil, and you gotta be like, oh no, protagonist, you gotta get out of his clutches, oh, what, he's manipulating you, and then you get to see, like, oh, he's changing, he's genuinely starting to care for you, he's regretting his actions and his deception of you, and then, but the protagonist has found out, and she doesn't believe him when he says he's changed, and there's so much great soap opera drama you could get from that. As opposed to just, you know he's a villain immediately in chapter 2, this plot is dropped forever, and we're in space now. Then I raise the question of which of them would become that character. The logical idea is Kane, and that probably would work better if he is going to be the actual romance. But just throwing out there, interesting idea of how it could happen with your brother. What if, like, we still have the parents dying in some tragic way, but, like, instead of it being a mystery, no, you didn't know they were superheroes, you knew they were superheroes and they died because they were superheroes. And all of this time, your brother who doesn't have powers, as opposed to you who does have powers, he's been, like, putting on a front, he's been trying to be all funny comic relief, all mad scientist brother and all that, as you see in regular canon, but he's been secretly nursing, like, a darkness inside him. Dark Smeagol. He's been thinking, like, oh, superpowers are the reason my parents have died. What if I lose my sister too to the same. That's the reason why I've been trying to develop a anti-superhero serum, because there's no reason given in the actual canon game. We don't know why this guy, who's like all of his friends are superheroes and he loves and cares about them, was inventing that in the first place. It seems to have just been an accident he happened upon while working with Kane, because for some reason Kane's electric powers can cause people's superpowers to stop, including his own powers. It works on himself. I don't get it. It's not very well explained. So what about if we do well explain it? In this version, your brother, secret dark past, he's a secret vigilante, he's secretly on the anti-superhero side. But it's not like he's just a big bigot or anything, it's like he just thinks that superpowers are the cause of like people going out and they're trying to save the day and they're getting killed. What thanks do you get for it in the end of the day? His parents died, like they didn't get any fame, he didn't get a hero's funeral. Him and his sister, like, we're surviving on the pittance of money we have left behind. And he just thinks if he could find a way to cure your superpowers, he'll stop you from ever going down the same path. Which leads to him being dragged into like this genuine, actual, bigoted, evil anti-superheroes group, and then like he doesn't realise how bad they are at first, but he gets in too deep and he can't get out. It's like the mafia. Again, great soap opera drama. You got his loyalties are tested, and you finding all these secrets about him, like, I still love you though, and then like I'm trying to bring him back from the brink, and then can he atone for what he's done? Can he escape this? There's so many good ways it could go. And one thing I was thinking would be great for a reveal is a reveal that your brother actually does have superpowers, because having a super mega ultra brain is a superpower in some settings. Be like, because he's like the younger brother, like after your parents died, he never got tested if he had superpowers or not. They didn't manifest until like later in his childhood. It was just mistaken for like, you are a regular prodigy kid, but he's got like he has some kind of way where his brain works in a way which makes him learn even faster than people who are like normally gifted in real life. Or he can do some kind of math. He can like summon math out of his mind and use telekinesis. I don't know. He has some kind of awakened power which is more than just, I'm really good at science. But he wasn't aware of it, and because he's been so like in denial and been so anti-superhero and everything, he hasn't been able to like fully manifest his powers. So like in the end, when he comes to like acceptance, being super is not the cause of the problem, it's people who are anti-super that are the cause of the reason why we're suffering. He like awakens to his true powers and he's able to fight alongside you in the end. I thought that would be a cool twist. And then the more obvious one is giving the supervillain plot to Kane himself. So it already doesn't make much sense how his dad is like the head of the anti-superhero league and he doesn't know it and he's a superhero and his dad is just letting him be a superhero. So I think it would make more sense in this universe if like you and your brother didn't know that Kane had superpowers. Like his dad, because he's so anti-superhero, has been like suppressing it. He's ashamed of him, he's a shame on the family. So he's got to pretend to be a regular human all the time. So from your perspective, you and your brother, he's a non-superpowered sidekick friend. But secretly behind the scenes, that's why he's a supervillain, because he couldn't register officially to be a superhero because of his dad and everything. He's becoming a vigilante. He's not like a full-on supervillain. He's doing like shady stuff in the process of like trying to sleuth out his dad's sneaky awfulness behind the scenes and stop it. And you, the protagonist, would encounter him like in this mode. And that's how you can have a situation of you initially thinking, oh, that's just a regular superhero, I've helped him out. Oh no, he's a villain. And then like later the even more stressful twist that, oh look, he was my best friend. My best friend is a bad guy. And then the extra twist, no, he's not. He's a vigilante against an even worse bad guy who is actually his dad. No! Like the maximum level of soap opera. And you can do all cool stuff with the contrast between the personality he has in like regular form and in supervillain form, like the act he's putting on. But oh, which one is the act? Is the cheerful facade the act? Is the evilness the act? Ooh! And then of course they're kind of an act. They're both different sides of him, and he's like neither one he can truly be himself, and what he has to do to be himself is to stop his evil father and get to finally be free of his grasp. And honestly, it would work perfectly for you to not know that this guy was Kane immediately, because just looking at his regular and superhero forms, if you've never seen him in the superhero outfit, then you wouldn't know. Like his entire head is electricity. Also, just simply the fact that he has the best superhero design of anyone else in the plot. Why did they give this design to the minor character and make the actual main character look like this? His villain outfit is boring, but at least it's one step above this. We're just like, what? Edith's brother from My Hero Academia, but a bad lover? What does any of this design have anything to do with either his powers or personality? Yeah then, regardless of which idea we choose to go with this, it would go the same path with the cool evil dad reveal, the climactic battle of him, maybe flesh out a bit more, make it even more satisfying in the end, combine the bits from the two routes into one, don't have like version exclusive being kicked in the nads versus being tased and dragged across a room, then get beat up twice as much. Hate this dude. And the difference would just be Kane is actually the focus more for all these things about his own backstory. And it ends with either a smooch of him or a big lovely platonic family time. Yippee! And the Fantasy Arabia plot. Lana. Give it to Lana. Everything we got with Jarvis, Lana. Her personality would just make it infinitely better. Just throw out the whole aspect of like, this is an alien planet which just happens to look and act exactly like magical fantasy. It is magical fantasy now. make her, I don't know, a dragon shapeshifter or something. I still find it so weird there's no explanation for why she's the only one who has slitted eyes and like all these more monstery traits than her brothers. She's a dragon, she's like a goddess creature, she's some kind of something. You are getting whisked off your feet. Like, the entirety of the Mistaken for Princess plot would work so much better and be like so much more refreshing if it was like a lesbian plot. Like, this kind of thing is overdone to the ridiculous extreme. Kidnapped by evil, like, rapist prince guy of some kind of brown-skinned race is such a ridiculously overly common trope in like classic Harlequin novels and shit. So I really would appreciate just any kind of shaking up being done to get rid of the more problematic aspect of that plot. Not that it's like obviously inherently going to be like suddenly better if it's a lesbian doing it, as well as making it a lesbian doing it also actually like get rid of the problematic shit. Like, we could just have this be a Mistaken for Princess plotline without the kidnapping. You know what's a great excuse for many things have used to make this exact plot right down to the kidnapping without kidnapping? That trope of like, you've been chosen to be the bride of the goddess or the god. You've been sacrificed to the fire god or something, and now you have to live in like this magical spirit world and be their bride. I like that as an excuse because it makes it's a scenario where you are like stuck in this new world and have to adapt to it and all that, and where you might start off with like negative feelings towards your new arranged spouse but then eventually figure it out. But also the spouse is not the one who did this to you. It's the fault of the humans who have like chosen to sacrifice you. Especially if the plot is like, oh, the dragon god never wanted sacrifices, the dragon god is just as sad as you are and everything. It becomes more of a plot line like, oh, these two people are just like trapped together and they are forced to learn about each other and maybe that'll eventually blossom into love, rather than this person has trapped you of their own free will and they know what they're doing and they have all the power in a relationship. Instead, we can just like bypass all of that and get straight to the wish fulfillment of like some big fancy prince or princess is wooing you. I do really like and appreciate when people find ways to have like these very specific character dynamics, but just in a way where it doesn't make one of them look like a total arsehole. Because I get it, there is genuine appeal to the idea of being swept off your feet and like forced into being a princess all of a sudden and all that. There's reasons why people enjoy it. There's also reasons why people enjoy dark fics and like non-consensual stuff like that. I don't like it myself, I don't have much experience about it myself, but I don't think everyone's bad just because they like something in fiction. But I'm just gonna say, like, there are ways to do this without that if you don't like that as well. I think that's really good. Honestly, it would have been a better way to handle, like, the fierce and nice choices if it was more like just select whether you want, like, a very dark version of this story or, like, a very fluffy version of this story. If it was actual any kind of differences whatsoever between... I will never stop complaining about how things went down in the canon version of this game, but that's off topic now, so let's stick to this. I personally think it would be great as hell and really, really unique to have this story of this, you being someone who's come from some kind of, like... It could even be, like, olden times, human times. Like, you've come from some kind of very aggressive, homophobic, like, village or something, and they sacrifice you to the dragon god or something. Oh, it turns out the dragon god is actually a dragon goddess, and then, like, in her world, it's, like, totally 100% okay to be, like, lesbian or bisexual or however you want to interpret it. So you're swept off your feet to a land of, like, acceptance and joy, and then you get to experience, like, your first same-sex relationship of your life after, like, dreaming so long for it and, like, feeling that you're terrible and corrupt for having these natural feelings and that no one ever accepted you, and now you're in a world where they all accept you, and just generally just, like, mix this idea with the concept of isekai, like going to an ideal world where things will actually be better, as opposed to just being locked in a terrible world where everything is worse and you have to date a guy now. Also, I just feel fundamentally Lana would work so much better with this with her personality. Like, she's sassy and flirty and, like, genuinely someone you'd actually want to date in any way whatsoever. Like, we get so much less screen time with her compared to Jarvis, and she still is, like, way more appealing. Like, they managed to nail her being someone you would want to date in, like, literally the first scene you ever see of her, as opposed to Jarvis, who takes... Again, I've got to stress, the last 3 chapters of a 28-chapter game, it takes until then to have any reason why the hell you should want to date him. It's so poorly handled. And he could still pull in those elements of, like, Lana having the twist of, like, being part of the rebellion. It doesn't have to necessarily be part of the rebellion. It could be a totally different twist, but she is somehow, in some way, not what you expected of her, and she's, like, more corrupt and morally ambiguous, and then, like, you have these debates, oh, is she really evil? Is she not? Can we convince her to, like, change her ways and things like that? Loads of ways you could go for that. I think that would work even better in this scenario, honestly, if she starts off being like, honestly, that's kind of how I'm imagining her in this route. It's like, you know Jack Harkness? That but a girl. You have this bombastic, big, massive personality, bisexual woman who, like, exists entirely to, like, make other people embrace their bisexuality and then awaken their mind to the possibilities of LGBTness in the world, and just being 100% confident in their sexuality as opposed to everyone else around her who has, like, deep angst about it and stuff like that. And also having that kind of, like, party boy personality that's all fake but then hiding, like, real deep trauma underneath and everything like that. Go and research, like, Jack Harkness in the main Doctor Who series, like, the earlier seasons of Torchwood. Go for that. before they just kind of like abandoned it all and went 100% angst and like, now he will do all the morally bad choices forever because our show has become about crying now. I really lost interest in Torchwood because it just made me so sad. And it's a shame because earlier seasons, like, I was sad, but I was also still invested. And then it was just like, oh, once you get to the point where, like, oh yeah, any character could die at any time, and the worst possible thing will always happen. And whenever you think a good episode is going to happen, it's just going to be a twist. And, oh no, it was bad all along. And you just end up not caring. And the same problem with season 6 and 7 of Buffy. Anyway, I'm going off topic. So yeah, that is my roadmap for this route. Some kind of human, or you could even be like, you could be a different magical person from a different world, like the fairies and then the dragons or whatever. But anyway, you are some kind of person who's been spirited away to this magical world and you're being romanced by this big bombastic bisexual half-dragon lady. And everything is awesome and fluff and wonderful joy forever. But, then you find out, beneath her wonderful fluff and joy forever persona, and the joy and the wonder and then the happiness, it could be so good, it'd be like a half comic relief, like, romance even, almost. And, like, you get to, like, act 2 of that, some big thing has been revealed, there's, like, corruption in the government of magical, it could still even be the rebellion, it could be, like, this could be the cause, like, whoever's been setting up a situation where, like, humans have to sacrifice other humans for dragon gods. It could be, like, her dad, the more evil dragon god or something. Or even just, like, the dragon god isn't truly the one in power. They're being manipulated by, like, a council of elders or something like that. Or it could just be an entirely wildly different plot line of something else is happening. Like, maybe she wants to war against the humans or something like that. And then it's like, well, you kind of have a point because humans were awful to me, but then also I don't think they're beyond redeeming. Like, you love me, but I'm a human, and like, why can't you have the same empathy for like the townsfolk who'll be hurt in this war? Of like we can't like use them as like acceptable sacrifices to get to the big bads who run it all. It's like etc. There's loads of different ways you could do it. There's 1,000 different ways to do it. Some kind of plot happens where it turns out Lana has like deep emotional hurt inside that she's been hiding behind it, like party cool person persona, and then she's got like morally ambiguous choices, and she makes the bad and awful one. She almost like ruins everything she has. Have a moment equivalent to when she was like basically just telling Nornas, hey, kill yourself to like save everybody else, and she never got any consequences whatsoever for that in canon. That fucking sucks. Also, it's stuff that only happens in one version of the game. Like, somehow if your protagonist is more dominant in bed, it makes Lana become evil, and I don't get it. And enough complaining about the canon. Have a moment like that where she makes some kind of situation like, oh, I had to make a sacrifice for the greater good, but it's like a really, really, really terrible, awful sacrifice that is bad and shit. And you desperately want to not do that. We have a big dramatic climactic arc where like you break up and you have to like try and stop her or something, you work for the other side, and then you have to make her realise that what she did was actually wrong, and she is just like becoming just as bad as the I don't phrase it as like just as bad as the oppressors. I do dislike that phrasing, but like she has become, in her attempts to stop like oppression, she has become someone who is like not even thinking anymore about the citizens that she was originally trying to protect. That's my way of phrasing it. Like, she's seen things only in terms of politics and not in terms of the real people who are being hurt. It all becomes like, let's make as many sacrifices as it takes to take down the oppressive system, and she doesn't realise like, if she becomes in this way someone who doesn't care about the people suffering in the system, what chances there won't end up just falling to corruption too in the end? And it's not just black and white, like, because there are situations where sacrifices do have to be made, but it's like, you need to know where to draw the line of when something's an acceptable sacrifice or not, and there could be 1,000 different debates. There could be different ways where the route ends. The player could get different endings where like, they side with her and they have like a dark ending where they join her like morally grey awkward faction, or they could have like a brighter ending where they convince her to do things another way. They could have like somewhere in between. I don't know, it can be better than just having the two routes for the game just change things arbitrarily because your character's personality is slightly different. I just think key to it all is like, if she does something as shit as the Nornas thing, actually get called out, actually have it be a dramatic moment which like breaks your trust in her, and she has to figure out by the end, yes, that was bad and I'm not going to do it again. Because don't just drop inciting a man to suicide in the last 5 seconds of a character who otherwise did not seem to be evil and is not treated as evil even after doing that. Jesus Christ. Also, on this route, that's where we could put Bilious. Because much as I love Bilious, I want him to have his own route. It is quite clear that if he was going to have his own route, he's the only one who had to like a totally different story, completely unrelated to everything we've seen in the game so far. If I had to pick, I'd say like make him an actual regular healer in like a JRPG world, because that is basically what his plot is, and they just said it was aliens. So if you don't want to go writing a wildly different setting and plot and everything with no other characters in this related to it at all, then just put Bilious where he is currently in the same plot as Lana. actually do something with his implied crush on Lana and their like off-screen relationship they have as like long-term friends and stuff. Like all we know is they're working together in the rebellion in canon, and like he is implied to love her, and then he just disappears from the rest of the plot. Every other side character comes back in one of the two endings, except Bilious. What happened to Bilious? He was so sweet and good! So instead of popping here, he can be the main, primary, secondary character next to Lana. He can be a big part in the plot. He can be the primary role of being her ally because there's nobody else here distracting it. He could even be the one who takes elements of like what Jarmus had in Lana's plot in the actual game. He could be the one who like sees her as like, oh, so fragile and needs to be protected, and then like, oh, doesn't see that she's like a fully rounded, like complex character, and like her intelligence is strength just as much as physical strength itself. I know it sounds like it would make sense to have it happen because Bilious isn't a physically strong person himself, but I think that could work really well. It's like, it's a self-confidence issue he has as someone who is weak and only a healer. Maybe he sees himself as bad and poor, and that's why he relates to Lana, is because he perceives her as also a weak person. And then why he would react so badly to finding out that she wasn't is because it's like, oh, well, this like bit of commonality we had has been broken, and like maybe I am truly just alone here. I am the weakest and worst person here. Just have him deal with like a strong, like relatable character arc like that. Have him have any character arc at all. Realising I forgot to mention, the idea I had was that if we are going with the dragon goddess plot, we could still have Bilious be a human healer who works for her. He could be one of her servants who's like always wanted to be her husband, but he knows that the way it has to go with this arranged marriage of humans from the other world and stuff. Like maybe he was like a rejected like human sacrifice candidate who was sent here, but then like whatever government is managing these arranged marriages between the different gods and goddesses rejected him for some reason. And maybe in his mind it's like, I'm not weak, I'm not worthy enough, my magic isn't strong enough and stuff like that. And it could be a way of foreshadowing and showing how like the system, the way this works, it's not the natural state of being. It's not just like heavenly ordained what gods have always been. Like it is like some gods are taking power over the other gods and defining this way to make it happen and stuff like that. Or the humans have corrupted the ways of the gods and the humans are like creating this system of how gods have to be and stuff. Or even just dragons are not actually gods. Humans are like worshipping them as gods and have created this system of them being treated as gods. And like they're treated as gods in name only, but they don't really have any power in it. They're limited by the system as much as... There's lots of ways you could go for this. Or you could just have Bilious be like, he is a weak, lower-ranking dragon who does not get allowed to join in the system of being assigned a human bride. Or maybe a different magical creature who works as a servant for the dragons, like a satyr or something. Entirely throwing it out there because his name kind of reminds me of Mr. Tumnus. The route could work. It could be a branching route where you either romance Lana or Bilious, but it just comes back to the same thing I thought about the main actual plot, is they should have just made it let you romance Jarmus or Eok. But if that's not happening in canon, then it's not happening in canon. I want it to happen in canon, though. I want to reach for the moon. I want the unreasonable things. Or it could be a branch like the route, like you either actually romance Lana or you get a platonic end for her and she ends up with Bilious instead. Because there is always that aspect, there are some people who just don't like the plot line of like, and then you were sacrificed to the dragon god and have to romance them, because like still it's an arranged marriage kind of situation. Even if it is a situation like it's not their fault, they weren't the one who chose to like put you into this, it's still a situation that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. So it would be really great and refreshing to have like a plot line where like you either can end up loving her by the end, or you just like, no, I still stick by what I said in the beginning, I don't want to be in an arranged marriage, and like prove that she's a good person by showing that she respects that and she's not going to force you into it, and you just end things platonically as friends and allies in the cool rebellion. It could still be like a great ending and you still became closer, you still understand each other, but it's just not a romance in the end. It could also still have you coming to terms with being bisexual as well and everything. Hell, make Bilious another woman, because I know it might feel accidentally weird if you had like a route where you're a bisexual character and then like escaping the arranged marriage, me going with a man. There are some people who probably interpret that as like, oh, the good ending is her becoming straight. It's like people who are already biphobic and don't accept that bisexual people just do like both genders might see it as like, oh, she got converted to being straight or something. It's always worth to keep in mind how people might misinterpret your plot, because honestly that's the problem with a lot of stuff in canon, where there's a lot of stuff that was clearly not purposefully meant to be problematic, but it just ended up being very strange due to flaws of like pacing and not thinking about how these things would be perceived. Like that one bloody line of like, a belly dancing outfit, that's not exactly something from Earth. Made no sense. I don't know how. That one really gets me. That one made me laugh the most of everything. So yeah, Lana and or Bilious route. Born of the Future popping in to add some more. I've now learned that the original casting call for Lana said that she was supposed to be disabled. Specifically that she used a leg brace for mobility issues. I don't know why this was removed in the final version, but put it back in, please. Like, I think a lot of disabled people in the audience would be cheering to have a positive disability representation as a love interest. I've been racking my brain, and honestly the only thing I can think is, like, maybe it's because you wouldn't be able to see it very well on sprites that are only seen from the waist up. But I don't know why we didn't just switch it to, like, a different disability on her arm, maybe. I would say maybe it's because she's, like, a morally ambiguous character in the end. I didn't want to make it look like, oh, bad representation of a disabled person is evil, but the game itself doesn't seem to be very aware that it's made Lana evil on, like, one of the two routes. The route where she out of nowhere just suddenly instigates Nornus into committing suicide, she still gets to be the queen of the planet in the end, and it's all just glossed over. And on an even more recent side, I really dislike that version of the route. Adding an extra bit in because I genuinely did not even think about it until I saw a really stupid thread on Twitter being like, oh, the supernatural creatures like gods, how could a god ever be disabled? It blew my mind because if you've done any reading into like basic mythology, there are dozens of gods who are disabled. It's a very Christian only idea that gods would always be physically perfect. So just throwing that in as an addendum, yes, I would still like the character to be disabled even if we did go with the plot of her being a dragon goddess. Also, ways disability can be worked into the plot we've already got working here. Perhaps Lana has a disability because she tried to rebel against her father, like the patriarch god who was like pushing her into the arranged marriage with humans system. And he injured her somehow, and that's why she's got crushed down. She's like, I have to do my rebellion in secret now. I have to like outwardly look like I'm this big, bubbly, happy person who loves to be in the system. And then underneath it, really, secretly, she's more critical of it than everybody else. Heck, you could even have that be a heartbreaking conflict during her route. Have her regretting that, like, her act, her farce, her mask she's been putting on has, like, ended up convincing you, the protagonist, to think that, yes, this system is correct and I should just join this arranged marriage with you. And then she's doubting, like, do you really love me or are you just falling into the system? And am I really falling from you or am I just becoming just as bad as my father? Great potential, 1,000 different ways you could go with this. Or it could be that if she was born with a disability, that's the reason why everyone else in the system looks down upon her and she has less power to be able to change things in the system. She's pushed into this marriage against her will. It could be like the higher ranking gods just get to marry other gods from other pantheons, and then like it's only the lower ranking ones that get these forced marriages, which are basically like being shackled to like a village of humans and then you can't leave and stuff. There's going to be something that humans are getting out of this that would like justify the whole system to be set up this way. Or it could just be that her disability is like something that's not even a disability for her species, it's just like in terms like when she's in human form she has a disability. I don't know, we shuffle it around. Instead of fire she's a water dragon, and they're like mermaidy, they don't have back legs. And then like when she turns into a human, like she can't swim around so she has to use a wheelchair. Or it could be like in canon where she doesn't have full control of her powers, where instead of phasing it would be like the ability to turn between a human and a dragon form. So maybe the reason she has a limp in one leg is like one of her legs remains a dragon leg. She can't fully change yet. And again I could go back, that's the reason why she's like low ranking in the gods and then she has to work in the subversiveness and do the rebellion, etc, etc, etc. I'm realising a lot of my ideas for Lana are a lot more vague, more scattered. I keep saying there's 1,000 different ways you could go for this. And that really is it. If anything, I have too many ideas for her, and I haven't really found a way to make them all mesh together perfectly. If anyone out there has more ideas to develop this, I'd be totally happy to have your help. And so, Nornus' route, post-apocalypse. As a refresher, Nornus' route in the main game is, he's a brother of the big villain guy, doesn't know his brother's a big villain guy, doesn't know that he has a secret superpower that he's had since he was born, and his brother's been using to kill people with. He's having his memory wiped every time it happens. It's a tragic story of someone being transformed into a human weapon against their will, and the level of betrayal it is to think that your brother who cared about you has been using you this way. The guilt you feel, and like, is it your responsibility what's been done with your body which was not your choice? So many levels, really interesting, deserves a full route. But what is another scenario where we could have that plot when it's not about aliens and superheroes? So that's why I went to post-apocalypse. Honestly, a lot of these routes would work better if we weren't restricted to having to make it be about tailoring. But it really got me thinking about how useful a tailor would actually be in a zombie apocalypse. When everyone's running low on supplies and scavenging, and like, you've got to have some kind of armor between your skin and the zombies who can infect you instantly with a bite. Someone whose special skill was taking a bunch of scrap clothes and stitching them together into like makeshift armor would be incredibly valuable. We could go with that. You are living in some kind of makeshift shelter where a bunch of survivors have gathered together and are trying to rebuild a town. And you are like the underrated role of the tailor who is like holding things together, being way more key to their success than they give you credit for. One day you meet this mysterious guy in like ramshackle hospital clothes who doesn't seem to remember anything, doesn't know that the apocalypse has happened. He's just woken up from a coma. And it turns out he's mysteriously immune to the virus. You've got to take Nornus in and like try and teach him how to survive and like get him used to what's going on. protagonist in kind of a mentorship role to him, as well as building up a romance. And this like brightness and optimism like brings back your hope for the future to remember how things used to be. At the same time, you can deal with subjects like the people in your shelter town are like they're trying to like use him to like synthesize a cure, and it's like, how far would you go to get a cure? You can let them experiment on him in like painful and unethical ways. Will you in the end like run off with him and run free into the wilderness and like, try and find another place which might be better? Will you be able to like bring things together and like take everything you've learned from Nornis and learned from this experience and like make a big stirring speech to convince everyone like it's not worth abandoning our humanity and our morals for the sake of this? And if we all work together, we could survive even if we can't make a cure and stuff like that. Lots of different ways it could go. But anyway, the big dramatic plot twist would be that Nornis actually isn't immune, he's patient zero of a disease. The whole time he's been trying to get back to his cool brother who like runs a big company or something. He's very rich, he's very famous, and he's totally great. We're going out every day like in the wilderness trying to search for signs of him. I'm sure once we find him everything will be okay. The ending twist could be like, we find the brother is like the leader of like a bigger, more massive corporation or something, which is like running like, I don't know, like the rich people equivalent shelter, like the only shelter which is like able to keep up like a normal human standard of life. Like the big place everyone wants to go, but they have like very stringent standard on who's allowed to go in. It's all like very able, it's like no sick people, no old people, etc. Basically the only guy who was profiting off the apocalypse. And it started being a bit sus, but like Nornis just keeps convincing, oh, his brother is totally fine, it's totally great. He can't be doing all these evil things that everyone's saying he's doing. So then Nornis gets the same sad revelation that his brother actually is the villain and he's been using him this entire time. I don't know, this businessman, this government guy, whatever big role of power his brother has, he had enough power to be able to engineer the apocalypse. He started the whole thing. He created the virus which has started all of this, and it was just a plan for him to like be able to control more of society and rearrange society in this way where he would have more power. And Nornis was the first patient he used to test the virus. And when it seemed that Nornis was in a coma he'd never wake up from, his brother just abandoned him. He just left him for dead in the wasteland. He'd outlived his usefulness anyway. Another idea I thought of, which would be even sadder, as if this poor boy needed more sadness. What if it turns out the twist is that Veritas isn't even actually his brother? What if Nornis was literally never human at all? Veritas isn't his brother but his creator, he made him in a lab. Like, that's the reason why he's the only, like, zombie who's still able to fully control his mind. He never had a human mind to begin with. He was created as a zombie from the beginning. But I think that would be, like, incredibly emotionally destructive to the poor guy, and it would also help, like, shake things up. Like, to players who've already played Jarmus's Root, who would already know the twist, like, oh, the brother is evil, here's an extra twist that you never would have seen coming. But I don't know if it is maybe just a bit too cruel. Nornis goes through the same arc of like having his hero worship his brother broken, having his whole perspective of the world change, having this guilt about what he's been used to do, and whether it's his responsibility or whether it's his brother's fault. Obviously it's his brother's fault. Unlike the actual final game, because this is a love interest route, we'll be able to actually convince him to live rather than sacrificing himself to save the world. And we still have some kind of different dramatic ending. You can have like a big angst arc of like, oh, your hometown, your ramshackle shelter, they kick you and Nornis out when they discover that he's like the patient zero of the virus. Like, oh, we can't trust him. We can't trust his story that he was like an innocent participant in this. He's probably just working along with the evil guy. And how do we even know that he's not still infectious and everything? Like, I was thinking the idea would be like, the reason he's like infected with a virus but he hasn't like lost his mind like everybody else, and why everyone thought he was immune because of that, it's like he's like accidentally the perfected form of the virus. Like, because he was in like stasis for 6 months or whatever, like it evolved within him and he's able to fully control his powers unlike all the other zombies. So you have a cool dramatic ending of like him like awakening to his powers in like a big moment of like rage and sadness, and you think he's gonna like destroy the city or something, but no, he's actually able to control it with the power of your love and the power of like knowing he's a good person deep down and it's not his fault what other people have done to him, and coping with his trauma in healthy ways, and just all the motivational goods. And then you and him with his new extra superpowers, you go and you take down his brother in a big dramatic super showdown. You have, of course, it's only 2 of you versus like a massive businessman guy in this big like stronghold city. So you've got to have like a big cool like heist scene almost. Like it's like a heist to get in there and take him out and to like to expose his crimes to the whole of the city and make them turn against him. And make the city and like the outside city like come together as one and ally and work together to actually like fix the apocalypse, rather than just like some people benefit off it at the cost of everybody else. We rekindle hope and we actually rebuild humanity the way it once was, and we get to cathartically kick Veritas' ass in a less anticlimactic way than it was in the final game. And Nornis does not die tragically with none of his plot resolved. I'm forever sad about that. We could still have like a fake out sacrifice scene where he intends to sacrifice himself to like save everybody. Maybe you could have multiple endings. You could have a bad or a good ending, and like depending on if you've like raised his love enough, he could survive the final attack. because I know when you have like an angsty plot, like sometimes people do want to just see bad endings, like to see the full-on angst and like really get you worked up, and you can have a catharsis of getting the good ending afterwards. I understand. A little bit of talk about the redesigns I did. Obviously this character doesn't have to change a lot to be in any AU where everyone's just a human. And unfortunately I was a bit limited because we do actually have like canonical design for human Veritas, his brother. Apparently in the upcoming Eoc as a medieval fantasy human route, Veritas is also going to be there. And to be quite honest, I don't like this design. It is like the most bare minimum. Like they are not even recognisably the same person at all, except just the fact that like the same poses and facial expressions are there. That's just a generic fancy white guy. So with that in mind, that Nornus has to also be like a white guy and presumably would also have the same hair colour. I did kind of fudge that a bit and I went like, because he's sick with the virus, his hair has gone white, give it a bit of an excuse to spice him up a bit more. And then I just kind of mostly went into making things more interesting with the outfit. I thought a bit of a more creative spin on the classic like zombie survivor uniform would be to make him look like this ramshackle situation of like a guy who has just escaped from like a rundown hospital, and you the protagonist have just like kind of shoved some outfit on top of him to like protect him from the zombies. Here's me trying to draw him in my actual art style. Except the hair is a lot more detailed than they usually draw it because like, I felt it would be bad if he wasn't recognisably still the same guy. But as you can see, he's a bit more stylised and cartoony. I'm not very good at imitating the actual Tailor Tales art style. I thought he could maybe show progress through his arc, through his different outfits. That could be another way of linking your tailor skills more into the plot. Like, he starts off looking extremely frail and, like, absolutely vulnerable. He's only wearing the hospital gown. Like, then you're improvising, you're shoving, like, random pieces of clothing you found on, like, corpses around the hospital onto him. Like, okay, we've got to get you out of here, we need some way of doing this. And then maybe he's, like, unwilling to open up to you, unwilling to, like, show too much of his skin because, like, again, the reveal, he's actually been infected the whole time. You could bring that element back in from his original alien design where he has, like, the little, glowy star spots all over him. But he could have, like, pock marks showing he's infected or something. And then, like, of course, it's a big mystery of, like, okay, if you apparently are infected, like, why are you showing no symptoms? Like, oh, and then that would make sense. Like, he would have to have something covering him up in the first scene when he's just wearing a hospital gown. So maybe you find him and he's covered himself up because he's like, okay, this is something is clearly wrong with me, and I am scared. Like, everyone around me has corpses, and then you've burst in with like a gun or whatever, and he doesn't know if he should trust you or not. But then when he does open up to a bit, it's like you're like repeatedly asking like, hey, let me like tailor you a better outfit and stuff, and he's like really vulnerable and unwilling to be touched and stuff like that. And then he can open up to you and he's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. As soon as I looked at the window and saw people who look like me are going crazy and eating people, I was terrified if I showed these disease marks to anyone and like they'd shoot me dead. And then you have like the big like the mind blowing like, oh my god, you must be immune to the infection, and like it kickstarts a plot of, like everyone, like the leaders in the town finding out about it, and then like they'll be like, oh, he's our saviour, and you think everything's gonna go well, and then you see like, oh, they've become corrupt and they start experimenting on him, and etc. The plot we already explained. So that'd be a good way of like linking his character design into that plot. But then also from that point, once the big reveals happen, then you can actually tailor him some nice outfits, and you can like show his progression where he's now wearing some kind of cozy sweat. It would still be like ramshackle and put together and everything, because that's just the situation. You are tailoring your clothes from fragments of other clothes. Having wear something that like suits his personality a lot more and is really cuddly and cute and adorable. And realising I went a little bit off topic there on the plot, so back to actually talking about this design. I did some more fiddling around with colour schemes here, like a lighter tone to the coat, and like what it would look like with like the dotty freckles that in this universe are zombie instead of alien. We're also experimenting with an idea for the hair, like to show that he started off with blonde hair, you could have like a sort of a dusty like gradient going on, like the white hair's growing in at the top, and then like as time progresses there's less, it looks like blonde frosted tips because that's all that's left of his original hair colour. And there's such a leap in colour scheme is because in the progress of drawing this, I ended up discovering, I think I'm going to edit into in one of the earlier videos, I discovered like the original casting call for this route had some beta images for the character. Veritas's beta image in full resolution has gone up on the Wikia page, and it looks cool, but we don't have any full resolution version of Nornus. We just have this tiny headshot that was on the casting call page. I just looked and I went, that colour scheme is amazing, headcanoning it now. It can also just look good to have his colour scheme like change drastically from like how he starts as like shy and super controlled by his brother, and like how by the end of it he has escaped and he is like moving on with you to a better life, and like quite literally his colours have all brightened up, and he's also wearing the adorable sweater that you made for him. I just want to throw in some kind of non-human elements. It's so hard of me genuinely to do a human AU of a monster character because I like monster characters. I don't want to downgrade him. So I'm also just throwing out this random design of like him a little bit monstery, a little bit fucked up. This is like his awakened super zombie powers mode in the end. It can even work like the pharsing in the main plot with like glowy eyes and you turn all cool and your powers and all that, but like a little bit less just looking like a human but you glow. I was trying to lean in more on the idea of like zombies as a biological weapon, like mutants and everything, because much as I like romances of monster characters, I do understand there is a logical issue with romancing a zombie. It's quite literally if like the person you're kissing, if their jawbone is falling off their face, that's going to be like a hygiene issue. So we're going more into the idea of like the zombies aren't like technically like dead or anything, they're more just like a mutation, a virus. So he's scrungly and cool, but you don't need to like kiss him through a sheet. And again, we can have it work like Fozzie, like he can turn back and forth from this design to the more humanoid one, so everyone wins. And then I started thinking about like, what if we make the zombies like plant themed in this? Or bring it back a little bit from Nornis's original plot, because I still can't get over how this original design, it looks so much like there should be a water themed alien, but no, they have grass powers instead. So anyway, I tried to make a design that is a bit more planty, but also crazy mutant. So the hand was an idea of like, it's a carnivorous flower thing made of like claws that were once his fingernails, and like it's all funky and crazy, like, and then like in a similar colour we got like fawns erupting from him, and like that would be like how the monsters spread the infection or something. It's like instead of bites they stab you with little plant fawns. I don't know. That idea, like where I took the colour scheme, based a lot on Gero Gero from Final Fantasy VIII, who is like one of my top favourite crazy bizarre zombie designs in all of video games. Interesting bit of trivia, this colour scheme is his English dub version. The original Japanese was just a completely regular like pink and reddish zombie, and even though the reasons of it are baffling, he was changed to like censor the existence of red, making it too gory, but they have the same exact design with all his guts hanging out, his flesh going everywhere. It has not censored it at all. But the blue colour, it's more interesting and unique actually. So I'm glad they went for that in the end, even if the reasons behind it were really stupid. So anyway, that's why we have a kind of a little bit of a gradient going on with the fawns. And of course, the blobs. Blobs everywhere. Then we just have a diagram, like I just imagine the hand can like stretch and grab and like woo, like Mr. Fantastic powers. Again, inspired by like Gero Gero just has an animation of already doing that. Is this too derivative? I'm sorry. And then experimenting with another idea of like, what if his eye turns into a flower? I don't know. Have a way of like bringing that striking colour from the arm also into the face. And then we have just a completely miscellaneous doodle page, going a little bit further away from just zombies and all these different like plant-based monster designs I could go for. Ones that all have like a kind of creepy aspect to them, like you could understand why people in this universe would be like, oh, that's terrifying, let's not turn into those. I do really like the one where like the whole torso is like made of like vines. I do like how it looks with like the hair being replaced with feathers, but I do wonder if it goes a bit too far away from his canon design. Then I also did like the long neck also being like a kind of like a skeleton thing. There also different variations on like putting the flower on the head in different places. And I am mildly fond of the idea of like the flower being like wings, like having vines that come out like big old hands like scuttle you around. Or just the entire head is a ball of grass. I don't know where I was going with that idea, but it looks really cool to me. I don't know. I just kind of went ham. I just couldn't stop drawing more and more plant zombies. If you in the audience have even more plant zombie designs, come talk to me. I'm getting hyped about this. Or if we just want to go with how it is in canon with like all of the love interests looking human, even the one who's supposed to be an alien. A few other colour scheme ideas. You could just go with like, looks exactly the same as human form, but like, you have the white skin, the glowy blue. I didn't even mention that. I was imagining that they would glow when he blushes, like his freckles literally light up, and that'd be very cute. But anyway, and moving on to that, I had a couple of other colour scheme ideas of which could work for that, where with like the monster form just looking the same but recoloured. First one here is what I was going to go for if I hadn't have stumbled into the beta design midway through it. Just heavily based on what he already is, but with a little bit more of a contrast to like the purely white skin to look a bit more sickly. Second one is just out of nowhere really. I just thought like, what is a good colour scheme that would go good with white hair? What if the skin instead is what goes all purpley bluish? And then having his eye be the same colour as like the flower, I don't know, maybe that'd be a nice idea. And then the third is like more of like a safe bet idea that's just closer to what it was before. Just have like a plain white skin tone, but still a normalish hair colour, just kind of great. Maybe this would work well if his hair was still blonde and then it turns grey or it turns white when he turns monster. I feel like this one looks the most like visually zombie immediately. The other two like his canon colour schemes does still like, it communicates wateriness, even though it was never meant to be that. And then the second one does kind of go a bit too much on the flower side. But I don't know, it's up to you and the audience which one you prefer. So there we go, that's all my ideas for Nornus. Honestly, personally, this is the idea I'm most invested in, actually. Eok obviously is my favourite, but there wasn't as much to say about him because it's just like, hey, the plot we already have in the game, just plonk Eok into the driver's seat. This one I enjoyed because it's one of my fave characters and I got to like completely flex my nonsense creativity and make up something entirely new. But it's up to you which of these ideas you actually like the best. And so that's my big ask for my 5,000 different types of rewrites. A whole sample platter of ideas that you could use and probably enjoy more than the actual game. I'd love to hear your opinions down in the comments, which of these you liked, which of them you didn't like, if you have any suggestions or different things that you would have done differently. Or, if you do just enjoy the final game and you think I'm totally full of I don't want to cut you guys out of the conversation, feel free to come in here and argue your case. I would love to just have a discussion about it. I've honestly got weirdly fascinated with this game, despite being one I didn't enjoy very much at all. I've been so fired up to make all these different critiques and analysis, and I've had a really great enjoyable time, not playing the game, but everything after playing the game. I've been having an absolute blast. So thank you, Tailor Tales, for being a game with so much potential in it, so many different ways things could have gone, so many AU ideas, so many genuinely good characters who don't get to be the main lead, that you just inspired me to go off and make more fun for myself. And I do hope there are people out there who are able to enjoy the game for what it is and find that fun in what we actually have. I do feel guilty that I'm not one of those people. I hope at least one of these videos could have brought a little bit of fun to the audience too. I had fun making them, I hope that shined through.